Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Budget Committee meeting November 29th. And we'll start with introductions.
Erin Mascor.
Tim DeBrio.
John Warren.
Michael Keister.
Mishka Haddock, Chair.
Rosalind Chavda.
Tony Dumas, Select Board.
Carol Merton.
Lee Lederer.
All right. And also joining us from the school is Scott Rennick. And all right, we wanted to go over some of the discussions of the school budget. I know there were some questions that needed to be addressed, and I think the best way to do that, just so we're not bouncing all over the place, is just to go page by page like we've done in the past. So I'm just going to open it up to all of you to come up with whatever questions you have, and Scott will come forward and join us and answer your questions if they come up. Of course, absolutely.
In this one I sit back.
Yeah, no.
Spread out.
So is there,
There are some differences. So rather than you folks generally, we took your feedback from the last meeting about clarifying different things. Just point them out. The joint board for the SAU and the preschool met Monday night. They are considering a significant
Software that we.
So, budget adjustments to position, adjustment to the software line. So that causes about a $50,000 increase in the second document, and then the preschool about a $1,000 increase. Well, it's 49 and 1, so it's about $50,000 total, $1,000 between each budget. If I can just outline for you that neither one of those budgets is adopted at this point. The joint board chose to put those numbers in there and then have a discussion at the December 10th meeting and public hearing, and talk about different funding sources or possibilities, and then make adjustments. So what you have is the latest and greatest, but not confirmed. So those are the major differences between those two budgets that you have. Does that make sense? That way you don't have to plow through your notes.
Zumba is loud tonight.
What's that?
I said Zumba is loud tonight.
Zumba is loud. All right, so on page 1, does anybody have any questions, comments? All right, having none.
Oh, question, right?
Yep.
We're on page 1, right?
Yep.
Lunchroom recess monitors. You know, in 2017, it was 10,472. Then in 2017-18, it was 7,900. Then we jumped up to the adopted of 11,000. And then we're going up again for 11,500. Why is there such a big, I mean,
So those are actuals, and so there have been instances in which we couldn't keep a lunch monitor. So we ended up spending less for the lunch monitor, even though more was budgeted. So if we budget for a lunch monitor, but then we're down a lunch monitor, what we end up spending is significantly less than what we budgeted for. So instead of looking at it like it went from 7,790 to 11,000, it's really that it went from what it would have been, which was about probably $10,000 to $11,000. Does that make sense?
They're
And
hard
Scott, you-
positions to fill because they're very part-time, right?
It's
Part-time.
also, if
low
you've ever been in the lunchroom,
income.
it's hard, it's hard to stay in there.
You couldn't
Not
pay
an
us
attractive
enough to do
position, is
that.
that what you're saying?
And what, it's only 2 hours a day, I believe, so it's another hard
Yeah,
way to get somebody to
yeah.
take that position.
It's also not a very high-paying position, so, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 2 out of the 3 or 2 out of 4 people that we lost went to positions that paid like $1 an hour more, so that was more attractive for them.
So I guess so 18, you're saying we didn't have enough people to fill in positions, so that's why we spent so much less money?
Well, we spent less money because we didn't have someone in the position. So people went in and filled in. So like I would go in and fill in for free. The principal would be in there, the assistant principal. When Mr. Rooney would come through the building, he would be in there. Anybody that we could get
I
to
was
go
looking
in,
at the table full of boys and stuff.
anybody we could get to go into the lunchroom.
So in order to fill that position for the full-time, having somebody always there enough, it's $11,000.
Approximately.
Okay.
For the retirements, are those definite, like they've already made that decision, or are we budgeting based on an estimate of an early retirement?
Where are you?
You have to,
That's the very first line.
if you could just identify the line for
Yep,
me.
that's
then
the
I can-
first one, 5110,000.
The
Oh,
project.
teacher salary?
Yeah,
It's under
20,000
teacher
for
salaries, but
early
there's
retirement.
an early
So in
retirement.
your
and then-
collective bargaining agreement, you have a retirement provision.
Right.
And it requires people to give notice.
So they've already given,
Well,
Or no,
they're
they
given
can take
notice,
it
but they
back.
can rescind it.
okay.
So, if you actually look at,
It says it won't be known until, yeah, next week.
if you go to your tab, I'm not gonna go into too much detail verbally, but if you go to your staff list, salary benefits tab, and flip that open. And if you look at the first section, and you just scan down the salary lines, you can see 2 inflated lines. That's because the retirement benefits calculated into those lines.
Oh, okay.
Got it? Does that answer your question?
Yep.
And if the committee has any questions about how the retirement works, it's in under your CBA tab. You can read through that.
All right, any other questions on page 1? No? On page 2.
So under repairs and maintenance, I know it's a small line item, but, you know, if you look again to 21, and then the zero money spent, then we got 350, and we're budgeting again another 350. Is that gonna be a normal line item every year, 350 to spend on repairs? Or is it something that we definitely need, is it just?
Well, the problem is that we don't know. So I think we have, in the last 2 years, been under spending that line because we have Scott Brown, who's amazing, who goes in and fixes, like he's MacGyver. And so he goes in and he fixes stuff instead of buying new stuff. And so we have it in there for the time when he can't fix something. And so we've underspent it, but we need it just in case, because if we don't have any money in the line, then we have to take it from somewhere else.
So, but this is just for repairs and maintenance, it's not for purchasing new equipment, because there's another line somewhere else
Yeah.
that talks
Right.
about a new shredder, right?
Right.
$350 wouldn't
So I would
buy
say
any
the
new piece of equipment. The $350 wouldn't buy any new piece of
No,
equipment,
exactly,
right?
but I just didn't know if it was getting pooled somewhere else and so on. I mean, if it could be taken, you know, I know the shredder is in the line, it ends up as being a line item, and it's a pretty significant expense, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the shredder is not cheap,
Right.
Yeah.
so I think that's budgeted in another line. I would say that without Mr. Sousa here, but from being in buildings and having walkie-talkies, the majority of that money is probably gonna be for batteries, for the walkie-talkies as they start to
Oh.
expire, and then laminator repairs and things like that. But you are correct that that line has not been touched yet this year.
So another question would be art supplies. The years before, we had 3,700, and then you're at basically 3,700, it's called 38, then we jump to 51, and then we go to 53, is the 5,000 now. I mean, that's a, you know, over $1,200, whatever, increase. Has art supplies gone up in that much time where that's gonna be to maintain that budget, or can we bring that budget back down to maybe a medium of 4,500 or something? Why are we going on such a big increase from 18 to 19 and then staying at that level and actually going up for 20?
Yeah, good question.
Why
That
is it,
is-
why do we,
That is a question that,
I have to clarify some things. So this is not, I'm here to take your questions.
okay, I'm just,
and then
I'm
come
just
back.
opening.
Yep.
Some of them I'll be able to answer right off and we'll be able to erase them. So if I look at you and don't answer you, it's because
Okay.
I'm writing the question down to have it come back for the 20. Does that make sense? So, all right. So I've recorded that. And when Mr. Sousa comes back with his big binder with all his budget requests, he can answer that question.
When's he gonna be here?
The 20th is your next meeting, correct?
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I had to-
Is the insurance buyout based on actual elections or is that an estimate?
Okay.
Sorry, line 5290.
It's based on this year's elections, how they elected this year?
So, yeah, I guess right along those same lines is the, you know, enrichment supplies, math supplies, my understanding that's a one-time, or is it, no, I'm sorry, that's music supplies that are a one-time purchase. But the math supplies.
What is
Is
your
that
question?
also-
Sorry.
Well, it's again a significant increase year over year from the, previous expenses that we've
Well,
actually had.
enrichment's never been, it's been zero.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at
gives
the
a good
wrong
point.
line, math supplies.
Mr. Haddock, I think the note might explain the increase, right?
Newer math projects and materials.
Right, the increase is due to adding newer math projects and materials for elementary grades as well as the math counts program to the middle school.
I think the majority of it would probably be the Math Counts program, which is it's a new enrichment program that has been offered, and I don't know what the annual fee is for it, but it offers enrichment for every grade.
For every grade?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe it's also what the math team is using.
Any other questions on page 2? Moving on to page 3.
So, I mean, again, it's gonna be asked the same thing, like, we go back to reading supplies, you have 2017, you didn't spend $132, then 18, we spent 0. Then you have the 19 budget at, $1,000, then we went to $1,800. Why, how can we go for years where we don't spend nothing to now spending an exorbitant, a major increase?
I mean, it says to order more.
Place all the level reading books, elementary books, yeah, we did that, why, I mean. Is that gonna, again, so that's a line item that next year should be almost obsolete again, back to the 0 mark, or is that gonna be something that?
Well, most of our books we buy on a cycle. And so, with the exception of some books that end up getting damaged or when we have a bubble, we cycle those books out. Scott, am I right in saying 4 to 5 years?
That's part of the answer. The rest of the answer is if I look at what we've spent to date out of that line, you've got 869 already spent, processed, and 200 encumbered, so you're already at the 1,069. And then if I reference that with the notes, he's got to do some replacements for the level of readers. So that's why you see that increase. Are you asking in the next year, will that go down?
Right.
I mean, it depends, how the consumables are used, so we have to plan that. I don't think anybody can answer that question with any specificity.
It's how the kids treat the books, I guess.
Yep. And also if we have
Well, it's
more
just nice to go
children
to the
than
next item, you see classroom
Yeah.
workbooks, and you see how that goes drastically down. So you're just kind of wondering where, I mean, I know there's differences of what we're spending on, but.
I think that's
You know,
because the
I'm-
workbooks are being phased out
I was
because they're
gonna-
using more line and
Yes.
electronic.
Which means that what will go up would be copying costs and, and other things. So, I mean, as we don't buy as many consumable workbooks, we still have to get the materials from somewhere. And so we're gonna end up probably doing a lot of stuff online. I know my kids bring home worksheets all the time, not necessarily from workbooks, but things that they copy from the internet, and then they have to go down to the copy machine and, make 60 copies of that, so.
see,
I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, the language arts books, I can only speak to the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade ones. They are all paperbacks, and many of them are literally falling apart. So the spines are broken, and so that's why they're being replaced.
You can also see 2 years prior, there
2
was
years
a
ago, we
textbook
had a-
adoption,
yeah.
there was a curriculum adoption, that's what the $50,000 would have been for.
right,
And then the following year, there was probably some supplementation to that. And then the year after that, they were all set. And then, now they
Now
put
just
$450 in there just to maintain.
We try to make sure that we smooth out the costs, so that we're not buying $100,000 of math books. So we're making it so that we're trying to buy, the same amount every year, and every 5 years, we're looking at our curriculum and our books.
so every 5 years, you're gonna be,
Is it 6?
or 6 years, you're gonna be
There's an
hit with a
there's an
$50,000
adoption
tab?
It depends. We are now looking at some math books that are actually free. So we might end up with a zero, we might just end up with copying costs. But that's another reason we have the textbook fund.
I guess,
They have an adoption cycle, so they'll look at social studies every 5 or 6 years, language arts on off years, to try to even out the expense of new textbook purchases or program adoptions.
yeah, because then we have nothing in science and nothing in social studies.
We bought new science books, I think, 2 years ago.
You're also going to see the sort of structure of those lines change now that technology's come into play in schools. You'll see, more online textbooks offered as part of the purchase, which brings your costs down a little bit in that area.
So that's the additional office shredder. So that was an expense that we did last year. 4,021, it's the next line down, 5731000.
Are you
that
on
was a
page 3
different-
or 4?
3.
So it says zero
Yeah.
in 16-17,
Yeah, let me just look.
4,000 in 17-18. And then this year, just 714. What's the 714 for?
I think the question is what the 4,000 was, because that wasn't, the shredder is what they're proposing for
The
1920,
That's
which
just
is the
new
1,000.
equipment.
Oh, an additional one, though? Was there other?
So are you saying we bought a shredder a year ago?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just
That's what
new
it shows.
equipment.
I mean, that's what it looks like,
No,
4,000.
Yeah, I
no,
think
it's
the
saying
note-
additional office shredder
Yeah.
is
For
In
not-
that-
the $1,000.
In that,
Yeah, but what was the 4,000 back in 17-18?
That is a good question. I can find out.
And then we only adopted $714 based on the fact that we had $4,000 in expenses on new equipment? I mean, I'm just wondering what else is included in that line, if this is just a line for shredders.
It's not a line just for shredders, is it, Scott?
New equipment.
It's for all new equipment.
So, but isn't there a separate line for computers and,
It's not technology, that I can tell you. But I can't tell you what's in it, but I can tell you that technology is not in it.
Just thinking out loud, because I volunteer in the workroom, was there a new copier possibly or something?
Those are
We don't-
probably leases.
yeah.
Or that's another different line
Yeah,
too?
those
Oh,
are
okay, or
leases.
something.
Usually leases.
is it like a postage machine? No, that would be
that's a
separate
different,
too.
that's a
isn't
different
it?
line, that's in the office of the principal.
So,
So, rather than guess, I've written the
Yeah.
line down and said
Definitely.
why 4,000 in 2007, 17, 18, 714 in 18, 19, although I can give you.
yeah, and that's just an odd number, 714 for 18, 19.
Yeah.
I mean, is
Well,
that, did we get a quote on a
we're gonna have to come back and give you that answer. But I
Alright.
can tell you out of the 714, there's 467 left right now.
Okay.
Got that down for you.
Any other questions on page 3? Having none, we'll move on to page 4.
I have a question, not so much to the numbers, but the process, on the health insurance, 1200-5211-061. When I was reviewing the full booklet of everybody's salaries, benefits, and then going into the health dental, it's very bare bones of what the process and what the employer contribution versus what the plans are. And I know, is it next year, the rate contract is up? Could you just explain, I was a little confused on the staffing, like I know if someone takes $6,000, they're not taking medical coverage, but it didn't really go into what the dental or other benefits are.
So that's protected information that we generally can't give detail on when it comes to like.
Well, not what, who does,
Benefit.
but more the
So-
employer structure, how much do they contribute? Is it based
Yep.
on the lower costing plan? And then do the employees
so-
need to buy up?
It's different by bargaining unit, right?
Oh,
So in your
okay.
CBAs, of course, you don't have your pair of CBA yet because it's going to, the TAs will be done next week. But if you look in your collective bargaining agreement for your teachers, and if you look in section 10, which starts on page 12,
It's the teacher CBA.
I'm sorry, which section are you on?
in the teacher
Teacher
CBA
CBA.
section,
Oh.
you go to page
Second set
12.
of tabs.
No offense, I have nothing in my
Oh,
copy.
Share with me.
No wonder why I don't
The right
know.
one? You're-
I have a label.
Para CBA is empty,
Oh, wait,
but the teacher
teacher.
CBA is
Oh,
Oh,
not.
wait,
Yours is empty.
I'm empty.
Just one.
Okay, it's not me. Thank you. Or, I got one, it was the same one. Oh, okay. Okay, that,
More complete.
maybe I'll have to come back, then that answers a lot.
Yeah,
That
it
I
does
couldn't.
explain the contributions in the plan.
So the short answer is they paid 90% of single, 80% of two-person, 80% of family for the
But
Blue
is it
Choice plan.
Each, okay, so just is the Blue Choice plan though the least expensive plan that you guys offer?
All right, I gotta go to a different section. I just gave away my CBA too, so hold on for a second.
Scott, I'm gonna get this back to you, so yours is.
All right, just
I can
make
have
sure
it.
you take it back. So if you turn to your health dental insurance rate sheet,
for it.
you can see that the BC3 Tier 10 prescription 10/20/45 is your most inexpensive plan.
Yep,
And then it increases as you go down. Now, not all, the teachers, it dictates what plan they get in their collective bargaining agreement, and then in your pair agreement, when you see that, that'll dictate what plan choices they have too.
but it said it was based on the Which plan is the 80% contribution on?
The BC 3T.
The
It's
re-
right
oh,
in your
okay.
CBA section.
Okay, it's
But they have an option to buy into one of the other ones.
Yes, they would pay the difference if they wanted the plusher plans.
The
there's-
AB 2007 they can buy into.
And then what's this, the
They pay the
third one
cost
that's only
differential.
$557? Why wouldn't you be basing your employer contribution off the lowest costing plan? I
Guess that's not what they negotiated in the
Because that
contract.
one, I believe, is not available to, hold on. It is. So employees may choose to participate in the Access Blue Plan, AB 27, RX 515, well, it's actually 10, 20, 45, okay. The second tier up, in lieu of the BC 3 plan, if the cost of the selected plan or membership level exceeds the cost paid by the school district under section 10A, the employee must pay the differential. And the ABOS 2040 is not offered for the teachers, so that's an option for the paraprofessionals,
Oh, okay.
I believe.
That's what they
without having
negotiated.
a adopted bargaining agreement in front of me yet.
Okay. And along with the bargaining agreement and the renegotiation, when this renewal is up, do you have a broker you work with? Do you shop it out to all
No.
the different carriers, or?
We have two options. We can use Health Trust or School Care. Health Trust assesses our rates overall for all the members in the state that are members of the Health Trust. So it's a pooled system, so you have a tendency to get lower rates. We did look in another district at brokering out through Cross Insurance, I believe, a couple of years ago. And the cost couldn't compare to either of the choices, and plus they negotiate the plan. So Health Trust New Hampshire provides all your plans. Health Trust brokers it out. We use
What
Blue-
most
use
municipalities and school districts.
Does that answer your question?
Yep.
So I think you had one more question about the rates, the increase maybe?
Well, I understand that,
The GMR,
unfortunately.
The
That's-
GMR, yeah, right.
That's fairly a good, somewhat good rate renewal, unfortunately.
Well, it could be lower. That's the guaranteed maximum rate. In the spring, we'll get our fixed rates. But you sort of have to budget on your GMR.
Do you have any more questions for page 4? On to page 5. The pre-K paraprofessional, is that due to demand or need? I mean, as far as like a student basis, is that why it's?
Yeah, so the way your preschool is structured is we have teachers and we have general paraprofessionals that we cost average out between the districts. I'll get there when you guys ask, when you folks ask that question. But if you have a student-specific need in your town, like a one-to-one for hygiene, mobility, behavior, then we budget those into your local districts. And then bill back to that line.
So this is something we pay for even if we don't use it? I guess we're sharing it with the district.
No.
No.
Okay.
You're gonna use it.
Okay. We are gonna use it? Okay.
I promise. I mean, unless somebody moves, but.
So you're saying this is specifically for a
That's a
child
child-
in Nottingham,
that's a-
not
Oh,
a child
okay.
in
That's
another
Money
town?
total that's assigned to a addition
To the
to
SAU.
general paraprofessionals and teachers that we have.
Gotcha.
That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What is a DOE 25 report?
So, in the fall, we are required to file a DOE 25, and then that data gets transferred to the MS 25, which goes to the DRA, which assists in setting your tax rate. So one of the things that we've discovered, which doesn't generally have a lot to do with the software system at the SAU, it has to do with how it was commissioned over the years. So we have there's a standard uniform accounting code book that we're supposed to use in the state of New Hampshire that has specific lines, function, and objects codes that are slightly misaligned in the 3 districts. And so we're trying to standardize those so that when we go to do the DOE 25, we can import data into that rather than having to do it by hand, which causes a significant amount of time commitment and an increase potential for error, right? So we're in the process of trying to, that's why you see new lines and it says there's a new line.
Yep.
And so that when we go to do it next year, it's done the way that it's supposed to be.
So,
It doesn't require.
so next year, the numbers filling in that.
No, you're gonna see these lines for 3 years. So this will be. That's what I used to do. So. Have at it. you know, you're basically making a forecast a year out on what your student needs are gonna be, right? So you're trying to base what Mr. Byrne does and what I trained him to do is you take what you have today, you put a 5% marker on it, because there's always gonna be an increase in your tuition, and you go with that number, and you cross your fingers and hope that that's enough, and hopefully it will be. Then you have a student move out that you've budgeted for and budgets are already adopted. You're not going to spend that money outside of that section. You're gonna return that.
And then you
It's
have,
gonna calculate into your
Yeah.
fund balance.
you have a fund in case you have a sudden
Right, and
dramatic
if we have a
increase.
sudden event, you also have, a reserve with about 103,000 in it right now, to take care of those unanticipated needs.
Okay. Thank you.
So you're gonna see when you get to your transportation section, you're gonna see another reduction in your special ed transportation because the students back in your public school, and now you don't require those transportation expenses, which can equal, the price of a placement, so.
I have to go back and look at my notes from last year. I'm looking at special education supplies, so third line up from the bottom. Office supplies to communicate with parents, prepare teams, so on and so forth. 2 years in a row, we were at $2,100. Why did we adopt a budget at $1,000 less for 18-19?
Most likely to do with the math supplies and the OT supplies and student need. I mean, your office supplies are gonna be pretty consistent over time. But your actual, whether you need math supplies, manipulatives for students with disabilities, or you need OT equipment, therapy putty, this and that, what we've done at the SAU is get the OTs together and collaborate on what we need, and then try to divide those costs between the 3 districts. We've done that for the last 2 years. And I think that's one of the reasons that you see a reduction is there's more of a collaboration between that related service. And then meetings every month with the student services director to find the needs. Plus, sometimes if we have surplus IDEA funds, we'll make those purchases out of there rather than affect your budget. Same with testing supplies underneath, so. All of your special education testing are normative assessments. They're individual administered, either achievement test or language test or sensory test. And they're updated when the publisher wants to update. We're on our 4th edition of the Wyatt, which is an individual achievement test. So that's why you'll see those swings is you don't get a year's notice when you go to update. And so all of a sudden you have to update your assessments, and so you'll see your budget sort of go like that based on mostly Pearson. Those are assessments.
We do.
Any other questions on page 5?
Is that what we're seeing in the language art reading supplies, is a shift in the reading intervention kit?
Where are you?
5610, sorry, I will get that right.
That's all right.
01-1200, 5610, 061.
Yeah, I mean, you can see there's, the note says there's an increase in due to the addition and need for an additional reading intervention kit called Quick Reads. This will help students in grades 2 through 8.
What you have now is not sufficient, or was it a refresh, like an upgrade to
Well,
the?
generally what we try to do is, so you have different areas of reading they need to target based on disabilities. So you need to have a cadre based on what student needs you're presented with. It's not that another program's ineffective, it may be for another purpose. You might have a student with comprehension difficulties, you might have students with decoding or encoding difficulties, and you're gonna use a different resource to try to address that deficiency.
On to page 6.
And that's where the $1,000 difference is that you,
Well, I'm actually
Talked
trying to
about it
predict
again.
you were gonna ask that question. Because I'm asking the question. Yeah, they just don't, are you talking about the new equipment line? Is that what you?
well, of just,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say the total, at the end, it was from, I'm looking at last report, it was at a 0.85% interest, and now it's at for the total special education, now it's 0.79%. So those numbers are just, I know you said at the beginning of the meeting that there were slight changes.
What was the original, the first percentage you gave?
It's talking about the increase of the section.
Oh, for the whole section?
Yes, for the whole section, sorry.
There was an increase in the section up on the last one, and now there's a decrease? Is that what you?
No, it's only off by 0.06. I'm looking right after, 0112005810.
Yeah, you're looking at the cost center
Yep,
total?
the very,
Mhm.
yes. Trying to go line by line.
No, I just need to pull two budgets.
That's what I was saying.
Oh, it's the preschool.
Okay.
Thank you.
I wrote down the note, I just didn't find the number.
still have to have an expense to pay them. They bring in $78,000 Medicaid revenue, we're gonna spend. And that's why it swings there.
Co-curricular activities.
Yes.
Notes explaining, that's on the next page, I don't know if that'll help.
Yeah, there's a note at the top.
There's a new stipend that,
Yes.
right, is,
Creating a stipend
This
for the
two
Wider
right here.
Horizons coordinator.
Also the gaming club. And then the overnight, the DC trip is in this budget, so that's the 3,600.
Oh, for the DC.
Yeah, you're looking at 3,600 to pay your overnight chaperones for the DC trip. You're paying $1,000 for a new club, gaining Wider Horizons coordinator. The rest is existing.
So did we never pay these stipends in the past? Or, because our history is 12,000, 14,000. We did DC trip last year.
We did not pay them stipend. They weren't paid.
And why are we doing things
They're gone for 3 days, 2 nights, and
This is part of their CBA too, right? So it wasn't part of the CBA a couple years ago?
I believe it was, and I don't know why we were not paying them.
So it's part of their.
Collective, but, yep.
Just don't mention it to the teachers that went a couple years ago.
So you don't have any chaperones.
So we're looking at, so in essence, what we're looking at here is that in the years to come, it's always gonna be $20,000.
well, except every other
Every other year
year,
is
the
the-
3,600 would, so it'll dip back a little bit. Should.
Those are 18,000.
One more time.
No, like next year it would be 18,000.
That contract was in effect when they went this past spring, so if they didn't get paid.
Without 100% confidence, I seem to remember, of course, it was in this position then, we may have paid that out of REAP. We may have paid stipends out of a grant.
The contract says they get paid $100 per night plus expenses. How many?
Oh, there, well, so, okay, so
So
at
it was
least
only a
100 kids,
handful.
yeah, at least 100 kids
You
go.
got 3 buses, right?
No, but there wasn't that many teachers that went. There
Of the
was maybe.
teachers being,
I think that there are at
reimbursed,
least, there are at least 8 or 10
maybe.
teachers, yeah. There are at least 100
2,400.
kids that go.
It was actually 4 nights, I think. they left Monday
It's
night.
either 3 or 4.
So.
I do remember that last year was one of the buses broke down.
Oh, yes, we know. We had to pick them up at 2 in the morning.
The texts were rampant.
So were mine.
Stories
So were ours.
drastically different from
We
one
were getting the
child.
play-by-play in a board meeting. It was really sort of,
Yeah, it
Yes,
happened-
maybe they got
it
paid for
happened-
Friday nights.
I was gonna say it happened while we were in a board meeting. All on the
Like
same
we're
bus.
Standing at Liar's Paradise.
I do feel like Mr. Sousa can provide some more clarity.
With the new stipend for Wider Horizons, is this hopefully to attract more after-school?
No,
Or
this is
just
to
to cover
pay,
who's
this is to
already-
pay for what we are already getting.
Okay.
The coordinator coordinates all of those clubs, the ski club. Oh, I can't even imagine doing the ski club, but the ski club, sorry.
One thing to ride on that bus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does both.
All of the contracts for the ski club, gets the bus stuff, coordinates with Pat's Peak, and then all of the other, and supervises all of these, all of the clubs. And so when someone wants to do a new club, they go to the coordinator, she susses it out, she does all the insurance. It's a lot of work for a volunteer position.
Behind-the-scenes admin.
Yes. So we created the stipend because it's a lot of work for free.
They used to be run out of the rec department.
I would have to tell you that I do not know. As long as I've been here, it's been Hawaii Horizons at the school. But I've only been with the school for 6 or 7 years. Okay.
Any more questions for Sergeant Lee?
The note was on page,
Yeah, the notes at the top of some.
I don't think we've quite reviewed the page 7. So. Pretty good, yeah.
I'm going to add a note at the bottom of page 7, to explain the differences. I believe it's a new line for the DOE 25.
You notice the retirement.
Yeah.
Wrote a note to have that clarified. Yeah, I just wrote a note to have it clarified for you for the next. Typo in the note.
R.
For 5739028, the replacement, looks like the budget for last year and proposed this year are the same. Is it because the soccer uniforms weren't actually replaced this year?
Tim, what line did you just say?
Replace other.
Thank you.
Well, if I look at the expense report, something was replaced this year, because that 1632, it has $500 left in that line.
Okay. Oh, okay,
Might
it's
have
maybe
been
the
girls'
girls.
soccer.
You also
last
added
year,
an
yeah.
additional team, girls soccer, up a note under officials and referees.
Did you go, what's the big jump?
The
Referees.
whole, athletic section, the biggest one is obviously the coaches, the referees. All the referees. And then I think, did Chris mention, I think, the $3,000 for the repairs and maintenance? The outside volleyball court, that's the same court that was just rebuilt.
Yep.
So, is that $3,000 like a maintenance fee for going forward? And then, or is there a bid or something that was done for this softball field as far as using some of that money? I remember him saying something about it.
Yeah, the NYA is doing that with them. So I think the NYA
They're
did,
sharing the costs.
and the NYA had done the, gotten a quote and for the softball field, that doesn't include the volleyball. Is it a conflict of interest for the school team captain?
That's a question that I can look into.
I'm just, because I know just on the NYA side, we have lots of different businesses looking to sponsor teams, which they do. I just don't know if they could do that for schools. Like, I mean, the NBA has sponsors now. I don't think GE is doing it anymore, but they were sponsoring uniforms.
I don't know if they can, because we had soccer games, like strikers soccer games. We had to make sure that we took down sponsorship signs. Or we let, I don't think the school could have any kind of. I don't know that for fact, but I do know we had to take those down.
Yeah, I don't know what the details are there too. I know, because we had talked at one point years ago about a scoreboard for the fields down here. And the select board had made some comments saying that there was no, that we were trying to get it sponsored by somebody.
Right, you were trying to get like a
maybe
Coca-Cola
bottling plant,
scoreboard.
Coca-Cola or somebody like that. And they couldn't have advertising on it.
Sponsor name, just not put their name
Yeah, right.
on. Just saying.
So that's gonna end up being a legal question, so we'll bring it to the board, they're gonna have to decide whether they want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just it's a question of whether we can somehow get some.
But if I think about my experience in education and looking at older facilities and newer facilities, I see older facilities that have the Coca-Cola, Pepsi scoreboards. I see any new facilities that have the Coca-Cola. For the youth,
say that you may not want to do that.
You got a Pepsi scoreboard on one side and a Coke on the other.
Well, even things like, there were some people who did not want certain of the corporate sponsors on their kids' uniforms last spring.
Yeah, because some the guidance salaries represent, is it two new full-time guidance counselors, or is it
Same too.
the same two? And is it contractual salary increase?
It's a contractual salary increase, but it also could include a track change. It's still contractual.
Do they fall under the CBA?
They do.
What are the guidance dues and fees that we're paying for? Is there a line item?
You're probably paying for,
5.8. I'm on page 8, right? Yeah, make sure. Make sure we switch.
The
page.
at
Do
the
you
bottom
see-
of it.
5810017, guidance, last item, basically. What are those?
Page 9. On the you're on the older version.
Yeah, oops.
Oh, sorry.
all right.
That's the one I marked all my stuff on, so it's.
Yeah, yeah, your American School Counselors Association. Dues and fees to the Counselors Association, New Hampshire School Counselors Association, American School Counselors Association. I happen to be married to guys.
So just out of bound, the benefit of being part of these associations is.
Well, the American School Counselors Association is a benefit too, which you get access to the listserv, publications. Also, guidance, well, I don't really like to call it guidance, it's actually school counseling now.
Change the section.
Change the section and some other things too. The American School Counselors sets the percentages, recommended percentages that guidance counselors should be doing system support, they should be doing kids, they should be doing classroom lessons, provides the counselors guidance.
Get
Want
access
to change
to
that word?
materials.
The guidance on how to structure their positions to meet the needs of the school. And access to resources.
It's they're the two professional associations.
I just asked because there's dues and fees with everything,
Yeah,
so.
yep.
The,
Not that I agree with it, but-
activities, is that based on the number of students also? I mean, one sudden jump, 3,000 last year, we adopted 3,000
Yeah.
this year.
Throughout the year. They're focusing as all the schools are. Resources used to address those soft skills. Last year, cycled percussion come in, I actually. We're definitely seeing an increase in social emotional issues in our population. If you look at some data that's coming out of the colleges and the increase in anxiety and depression. It's well documented and well researched. We need to address those needs of the students to be able to allow them to access learning. It's just a condition of society right now.
Outside the special contracted services, outside evaluation, elementary.
Yep.
What exactly is that, like a contract?
All right, so
that comes in?
under the under IDEA in the special education rules in the state of New Hampshire, if the special ed team performs an evaluation on a student and the parent disagrees with the results, they have the right to ask for an independent evaluation, an outside evaluation. The Director of Student Services has the choice to grant that evaluation or file for due process with the state. The cost of going to a due process hearing as opposed to granting the evaluation is significant.
Yeah.
So we always try to keep a marker in the budget to address that. And then if the evaluation goes over that cost, we'll either overrun the cost center or we'll look for grant funds.
Physical therapist. Is that a salary?
No, that's a purchase service agreement through Stratford Learning Center. So you pay membership to Stratford Learning Center, so you get contracted services as a reduced rate as opposed to in December. I believe that 5 years ago I gave the budget committee a spreadsheet about that. Like, this is what it costs with your membership, this is what it's more cost effective. Physical therapy is a pretty limited related service in public schools because it has to do with being able to perform in public school when PT, private office or a medical setting has to do with function and mobility more. So rather than try to hire a physical therapist and to have that relatively large cost, we are able to assess the student need and just buy the service as we need. Stratford Learning Center. So as part of a budget projection, we always try to put we never know at this point in the year what your increases are going to be. So for services like that, we try to throw a 5% marker on it just to make sure that it's covered.
It's odd because in 16-17 it was 17,000. And in 17-18 it was $9,000 or $10,000
Yep.
actual. And then we back up,
Yep. So there's two pieces there. Physical therapy, once you get the goals and objectives and the IEPs addressed, it goes away, right? So the other variable you have is your student population going out. So you're always gonna see that swing a little bit. In addition to that, you're trying to make a prediction about, 9 months out on what you need. So you'll see the actuals and the budgeted amounts have some disparity based on the unpredictability of the population and the dating of the service.
Any other questions on page 10? We'll go to page 11.
I'm anticipating a question about the second line down. Right, so you look at your actuals from 16-17, you're at $25,000 and then 0, 0, 0, 0, $1 in the line. So in that year, you had, one of your pathologists went out on maternity leave and we needed to hire a service. So that's why it's showing there, and then, we put $1 in that line just to hold it in case we need it.
I got a question on course tuition reimbursement, right in the middle of page 11. It shows our actuals of 36,000, then 32,000.
32.
Then we adopted a budget of 25,000.
Now you propose to
And now we're
30.
proposing to go back up, obviously to meet the actuals, but
Yep.
I guess my question, having unfortunately, is what did we budget in 17, 18 for that category? Only because I'm wondering, did we overexpend that category?
I remember Chris saying that more teachers took advantage of that.
Right, but isn't there, I mean, I'm all for continuing ed, but if you've got a budget, shouldn't you stick with the budget?
Or you've got a contract. You've got a collective bargaining
So-
agreement.
So the way we actually do that is we anticipate that some percentage of them will take advantage of that. But we don't budget for 100% of them because 100% of them don't ever use it. And so if everybody took advantage of what's in their CBA, it would be far above what the budgeted amount would be. But we don't want to assume that they're all going to do it because that would inflate our budget.
you can't limit it. because
Right,
it's
you're
ZBA.
absolutely right.
Yeah.
So we can't anticipate.
The other variable, I'm gonna get you this, I wrote it, we'll get you the information.
Yeah.
The other variable you need to consider is newer, younger teachers coming into the district who are going to pull off that line more than somebody who, right, so as you look at retirements and this and that, new hires, there's two sections that potentially are gonna be affected. One is your professional development, your course reimbursement lines, and the other, as the employee stay, could be substitute lines because maternity leaves and this and that.
There's in the contract, there's a cap of $4,000 per employee for the teacher's contract
Right.
per year.
So if you looked at,
Yes, it's per year.
if you went back just into your regular ed, your 34 teachers, if you budgeted the full amount,
It doesn't say per year.
it'd be 100
And those are for master's classes. Or graduate classes.
right, they're, yeah. Base entry is gonna be a bachelor's degree, so they're gonna be.
The in-service training by the comment, is that like a requirement for the schools, schools, as demonstrated success?
It's not a requirement, so Demonstrated Success is a New Hampshire-based company, organization, that tries to provide professional development in a cost-effective way by having different schools join the consortium, so it gives you access to different things. Right now, Nottingham is using, has used Demonstrated Success this summer to help the alignment and competency-based movement, so Mr. Sousa would like to continue that next year, so he's included that. in his budget.
But then for the following years, it should possibly stay at the 9,000.
Well, as I tried to explain to, it depends how much progress you make. So competencies are pretty complicated, and it depends on the entry point for the school based on their culture. I expect some significant work to be done in Nottingham this year on aligning to the competencies and defining the competencies. As I said last evening in another meeting, it was like competency-based education is a process, right? So we could, and it's not a linear, as much as I would like things to be linear, this is what we're gonna do, next, it is not a linear process. So I think Mr. Sousa would have to gauge each year when he goes to budget and where the staff is at in the process and what he would think the costs would be and what resources. Our hope is always that once the staff gains the internal capacity and knowledge to apply the process and develop it, that you see those lines start to shrink away. The challenge that we have in our state is the state has defined that we use competencies and work on competencies, and you never really know when you're done with that if there's going to be something else they want you to implement. So it's really to gauge what the staff needs to adjust that each year.
Rochester has done a ton of work in the
Sure, yeah.
education. Are
Yep.
you able to draw from some of what they've done so far?
Well, I would say we're probably drawing more off of Sanborn right now. The issues with competencies is, you know, I can take the state competencies and I can print them off and I can give them to the staff. We can do that. But it doesn't give them the context and process as they work through it to own it. Do you know what I mean? So, in my opinion, and I'm sure there's people that would disagree with me, competency-based education in Nottingham or Northwood or Stratford or wherever needs to start at the grassroots, and it needs to be a collaborative process. And sure, you can grab resources. You know, I've used the Spalding High School competency model to take a look at how people do things. Cobra is a competency model that they use, but I don't know. You got to sort of do the hard work to implement it, and plus your competencies may be different. Maybe the school thinks it's important that in social studies that the students in Nottingham have a good foundation in the historical events that occurred within this region, and to find that as a competency, as a way to analyze historical data and predictions. So that's sort of like your local piece of the competency.
And they have to also be responsive to the community, which you don't really realize. I mean, you don't know how the community is going to react to them until you put them out there. And then you have parents who say, well, I don't like that you did it this way, or how am I supposed to know how my kid does blah, blah, blah? And then you might have to change that.
You may have a different focus based on your population, right? So your population of students may, because of the upbringing that they have, already have some ingrained readiness skills for work, so you don't have to focus on that as much in your school. You know, when it comes to those soft skills and those cross-cutting competencies, so the cross-cutting competencies have to do with social emotional learning, and they're applied to all content areas. There may be a need in your community not to focus on some of those defined competencies, but there may be a need for you to develop some other competencies that meet a need identified by your school community. It's just not a linear process. It's a good process.
Question on the page 11, instruction and curricular development. The insurance, health insurance, was that a change in policy or a change in plan?
Hypothetically, insurance line, it could have been a change in life. Plan, could have been a change in the number of people in the plan.
Oh, it's just because it's a significant jump from 1 year to the
I think we
next.
can probably make the assumption that they're
The problem,
Changing life.
yeah, I was going to say, the
Adding
problem
a
with that is that
dependent.
it's just one person.
there's
in
a
that
change from a
department.
single to a two-person or a family,
Yeah.
plus the GMR.
So note to self,
I just
we'll,
want to make sure it wasn't a error.
Yeah, I already looked at it. I already predicted you
No,
were
you're
gonna ask
right.
that, so.
we can never really ask specifics on any
Correct.
of the health insurance lines.
No, I know,
right?
I was just wanting to make sure that it wasn't a, you know.
We have a history, so he's entitled to.
I think we gave you a nice generic answer that covered it, so.
It's all good. All right, any other questions on page 11? Page 12?
For the new equipment under Chromebooks,
Spelling?
no, I was just gonna say they're designed to go 5 years, and they are now in their 6th year. And Kevin has been just replacing things and sprucing them up, and he's got them, still going, so.
Silly question. Do you spell warranty? with
I
an
already
E?
got it,
Oh, you
yeah.
got that one, okay.
I got that.
And just out of curiosity, how many Chromebooks is Mr. Smith managing for the whole school? Do we-
That is a good question.
So is
Uh,
that just if they actually fail, they'll get replaced? He's not automatically?
Well, if they fail and he can't find the part.
Then he'll
the
replace
part-
it.
Yeah,
Because that's obviously not enough to replace
right, yeah, no, we don't,
hundreds.
yes.
I got that.
Any other questions on page 13?
Article to add Chromebooks for 6th grade, or is that not?
For now, we have decided not to do that. We need a new technology plan, and we need to make sure that we are, that we understand why we would be adding Chromebooks for the 6th grade. I think unfortunately in this day and age, many educators are going towards a lot of technology without a thought as to what it's supposed to do for you. So we're looking at it from the curriculum side, not just the adding technologies.
I know that for 6th grade, most of their books are electronic this year. So if they don't have a computer at home to access it, they have to bring a book home.
There's also been a lot of talk lately, I think, at least what I've heard, is trying to get students to do more hands-on activities versus just, typing into the keyboard.
Yep. Handwriting and
Well, handwriting,
taking
just,
notes.
such as doing,
Project-based learning,
project, a lot of project-based.
which technology is a good augmentation to project-based.
dues and fees.
Any questions on page 14? Going on to page 15?
Sorry. But on 14, on the last line item, the advertising and legal notices. I know the budget last year adopted was 2,000, and this year it's going to be the same, but why the huge jump?
Question.
That is a good question.
Got it. Answer, but I got the question.
the SAU 44 district assessment is a new line plus a 7.2% increase over previous years. Why the, I see where you for some reason created a new line.
It's the chart of accounts issue.
Chart of accounts.
Right. And then why the increase? That's a significant $34,000 increase.
So, right now, as I mentioned earlier, that's in draft form. I've just updated that based on the meeting on Monday night. The SAU board, the joint board, needs to make some decisions on the 10th. So that number could change. Significant increase in the SAU budget. The overall SAU budget draft as it stands right now.
Yeah, is that the one because of the software increase of 50K?
The software and the HR
I
position.
mean, the overall increase to the SAU budget with that software in there and the way they fund that could change, so it's 52,930. But then if I look back at your equalized evaluation, you're up to almost 40% of the SAU expenses based on the formula. The Nottingham allocation in 2020 budget is 39.55% based on averaging the Nottingham town valuation as a percentage of the SAU 44 town valuation. Nottingham percent of students enrollment. Your apportionment has changed.
Any other questions on page 15? And then we'll move on to page 16.
Telephone maintenance on, yep. So the telephone system is so old that they don't make it anymore. However, there was someone who, I think Kevin said someone in either Massachusetts or someone around here had a system that they wanted to get rid of. So they donated a whole system to us. So he's going to use it to pick it apart for parts. And so this is just $900. More MacGyver stuff.
Cannibalizing.
Duct tape and gum.
Maybe
So
they
he's saying in 3 years, the telephone budget's gonna go up quite a bit?
It might, it might. I encourage us to look at it this way. We've saved money all of this time.
All right, any questions on page 16?
Chris might have mentioned this last time, I don't remember, I take it that he's taking graduate classes at UNH now that he's,
We
That's an
we
issue.
encourage, yeah, Scott. They're everywhere. No, they're just dues and fees for whatever is specific to that area. So these organizations are for the assistant principal and principal. The ones that you saw before were like for the guidance, for the school counselors. And then you see some in some sections where they're for the math team and for the,
Yeah, because there's one here, it says, what is
yeah, they're just all specific to that section.
this? Instruction and curriculum development. So he's got.
Sorry, which line are you on?
I'm going all the way back to page 11, but.
Oh, okay.
So instruction and curriculum development, it shows NHASP membership, dues and fees. And then you've got here for, principal, I think it is, back to page 17, NHASP, dues and membership.
So most of the
Right.
profession, sorry, go on.
Your curriculum director is also a certified principal,
Right, but I mean, it's,
so that's his NASP fee?
right,
And then in the principal line, that's the principal and the
so
assistant.
it's all broken out.
Yeah, it's
per-
done by individual, yeah,
For
Per
each
cost center.
individual versus just one lump sum for the school.
right, right. So just so you know, NASP is New Hampshire Association of School Principals, NELMS is New England League of Middle Schools. Again, I don't want, paying your membership at dues and fees gives you some cost benefit when it comes to
It also enables them to tap into resources.
networks you.
So if you remember, it's a lower cost than if you weren't.
Yeah, it's usually, you get them at a discount or.
Any other questions on page 17? Page 18?
Lawn care. Specific. Just
It needs to be renamed.
Yes.
Did we do that?
yes. It's not renamed, it's still,
The notes have all the extra.
The notes have all the detail.
I gotta,
Right.
Repairs and maintenance grounds, there's a $5,000 increase in anticipation of the
We've already,
sinkhole rowing.
we've already, yeah, I think there is a road sinkholes. We already repaired some of them. Got some depressions forming.
what a nice way to put it.
Thank you. At least they don't have to go cones on them, so the buses go around them.
Any questions on page 18? Page 19? middle of the page, on page 19, it says replacement of equipment. What is covered in that? Replacement of equipment? I don't. Curious, only because we went from 5,500 on actuals in 16, 17 down to, about 1,200 last year. Budgeted 1,200 for this year, and then we're going down again to these three.
So this could be, Scott, is this doors and door hardware?
No, this is a question that we need Chris to come back with detail for.
Because this is Scott's section.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Too many Scots running around.
Sorry, I was thinking, yeah, Scott Brown. Sorry.
Any questions on page 19? Page 20, the line that says transfer to food service. Where,
Scott, is this because this is an SAU?
No. It's to do when so your food service, if it overruns, transfer from your general fund in the end of the year. Typically, food service in the state of, well, everywhere.
It's a cost.
Deficit. And to do your transfer.
so does this show up somewhere else in the budget?
Really have to check on that with the business administrator. Food service isn't. But we can certainly clarify that for you. I think the board members, when they have a board meeting, will have some information too.
Any questions on page 20? Page 21?
What are the repairs to equipment for the past 2 years? The repairs to equipment for the past 2 years, 5430000.
So, I actually know this. I can't tell you why I can't.
Big old oven, a big old dishwasher.
No, we replaced, you know what,
forget
let me
what it
go back.
was, but
We
yeah, I
replaced
heard
something and then we repaired something, and I'm sorry.
Or was that the
I'll get back to you.
generator, maybe?
No,
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 no.
There was
no.
something in the kitchen.
In the kitchen,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kitchen equipment, I can't.
And
We're
then
gonna-
getting
Vent
rid,
hood or something? I forgot.
we'll find out.
Dave, really looking for history and detail?
Yeah, just for last year and this year, I guess what the budget is.
Yeah, 'cause, I mean, obviously, we adopted $4,000,
Yeah.
so we must have been anticipating something. And you guys are anticipating something else.
You've already paid on an invoice of almost $700 this year, and you got an encumbrance, so.
Maintenance was
Just sometime this week, I don't
there. I
remember.
remember seeing the truck in there for the kitchen services, whatever repair. Any other questions on page 21? The tuition anticipated movements, was that another one where it's a new line item or something?
No, actually, that was a line added last year.
Right, okay, so that's why there's no.
I think it was the Michael Keister line. And so that's on my list for the board meeting and I said at the last one, we need to define what we think should be or not be. Because it hasn't been. Let's take a look.
We have a fund set up for that potential.
A reserve.
You don't. You mean a warrant?
Yeah, I thought there was last year that passed and, or maybe it was proposed and didn't pass. Maybe that's,
Everything passed last year. I can check. Oh, you have it? Maybe you do.
it's gonna take me a while to find it. Carry on.
See, high school education is up. It's 11%.
I think the enrollment of incoming versus outgoing, the increased enrollment.
We're sort of guessing right now, too.
But the total number of incoming ninth graders is higher than the outgoing 12th graders.
It'll be the same,
It's
yeah,
gonna
just
keep
keep
going
going up,
for several years, right?
for at least the next 4 or 5 years. Well, our second grade is small. That's exactly what it is.
First and second grade are both small, so we just have to hold
If I
on.
Just have
recall,
to
it
hold
was,
on for 6 years.
Yeah.
the school board was proposing as a way to mitigate this, and they pulled it back before we actually went to deliberative session on that.
I do remember significant discussion here. I think about the warrants last year, other than the budget.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Well, I remember arguing the point that there wasn't any justification for the number of move-ins that they're anticipating, given the history of population.
That's one of the reasons when I did the initial draft budget is I left that, the board needs to have that discussion and determine what they think they want in that.
We started out saying,
Discussion for 4 years.
we started
yeah,
out saying.
I bring this up every year.
three or
With us.
four, but then it inflates the budget so much that.
I mean,
I've been here 17 years now, Scott.
I know, but I've only known it, so.
And then there was talk about, I think you guys are in communication with the building, or the planning board, or not, the planning board, or building inspector. with
Looking
regards
at
to
the-
housing permits and
Yep.
all that kind of stuff, to see, what would be potentially.
Also, the board has, the board wisely made some dues and fees and purchased a NASDAQ membership, and we just sent the data in based on the October 1st enrollments, and then we're getting enrollment projection. That's another piece of, they've had some done from Administrators Association, now they're having some by NASDAQ to see if we can predict.
And how good's their track record?
What?
And how good is their track record?
I think, over time, it's a little more stable. I have to say,
Are you talking about NASDAQ specifically?
you're experiencing enrollments sort of anomalous a little bit, where places are experiencing declining enrollments. Sister districts are experiencing declining enrollments. Seacoast overall, Eastern Rockingham, or Rockingham County, is predicted to have flat, just slightly increasing or slightly declining enrollments, where in the North Country, it's much more predictable to say that your enrollments are going to decline over time. I mean, not just Nottingham, but Rockingham County in general, is a desirable geographical area for industry and Massachusetts and the seacoast. So your county sort of bucks the trend a little bit, but then within your county, you have different districts that are having different experiences. Overall, your state is aging. Your median average age is increasing. Sort of the rub in the analysis comes in to almost dividing the state into two pieces to try to get a grip and predict. Predicted that things are going to go up or down, and they do go down or up.
Scott, have you worked with NASDAQ before?
I've worked with NASDAQ, yeah, when I was in Milton. And again, I think that, when you're looking at data, you want to triangulate as much as possible. We got two pieces, we don't have the full triangle there, but you have your school administrator study, and then you'll have your NASDAQ study, and you can try to draw some conclusions out of that. In your town, enrollments are at least flat. Enrollment report has at 511 right now. Or your true enrollments are 515 right now. Based on the first of the month. So we'll wait and see when we get our study and look.
Just my casual observation over the years has been that we've done very poorly at predicting our high school enrollment specifically.
Do you mean how many of our students go to Dover, how many go to Co-Brown?
No,
Oh, just,
You mean what the enrollments are gonna do in
total
general?
high school enrollment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we anticipate more than
Yep, yep.
in September that are not there.
or you anticipate that you're gonna need this many extra,
Right.
and you don't use that many extra. But I think right now, as far as your high school population, that's easy to predict, because we look into the elementary school and we know that you're gonna have some increases over the next, you know, see that happen. Moderately larger classes coming up into the eighth grades, and then they drop off again. You know, the other complication that you have is, recently for kindergarten, what does that mean? You gotta wait for that data to sort of, you gotta analyze. So if we have 40 kids enrolling in kindergarten in an average year, and then in first grade, we're seeing 15 more, because some people still choose to go to private kindergarten or not kindergarten. You gotta take those pieces of data and try to analyze them and make a prediction. One of the most stable pieces of data that I see is, I'll take your preschool numbers and apply that by your rate of identification for special education, and I can come up with a general idea of what your kindergarten will be within 25%. It's math. It's a lot.
And small sample size.
Very, right, not a predictable, right,
Yeah.
right.
Questions on page 22? 3?
Good.
Thank you for. Unexpected.
Administrators, and then we'll discuss with the board.
stage are you?
Mine's two.
Well, I think the biggest hate is didn't see last week's select board meeting. Presentation made. It's public now. The town has been company follow for the possibility. For the land. Nothing's been settled. There's still some outstanding issues with winding down a 3-year window. No, there's the if the project goes through completion, you're looking at
ones that have the edits in them.
about February.
Line 28 on page 1, the introduction of full-day kindergarten has been implemented for minor budget increases. And I think that between 26 and 27, Ms. Levinson reviewed the budget binder stating the 2019-20 proposed budget is still in draft form and provided the committee with the budget drivers considered by the school board. I'm sorry, I want to make one more change on line 28, implemented with minor budget increases. Yep.
On line 30, take out the word "for." The board continues to make repairs to the building.
Yep.
Considers.
Line 48 says science supplies was decreased and those purchased will meet the new standards. I don't understand that.
I think the line amount was decreased from the previous year.
But what does those purchased mean? I get the
The-
science supplies was decreased
The,
from previous years.
the books that were
purchased,
previously,
sorry.
yeah, okay, previously.
The new
Previously
generation science
purchased,
standards,
okay.
yeah.
Just thinking out loud, maybe we should do these at the beginning of the meeting instead.
So I'll add the supplies previously
Yep.
in between those purchased?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Line 50, you mentioned it, Mr. Bryan.
What?
Line 51, Rosalind mentioned doing a you know,
Search and replace.
search and replace for Mr. Byrne.
I don't know.
Oh, you fixed it though on 52.
It's someplace.
I'm like, ooh.
On line 54, you can take the D off moved. It has requested the SAE move.
Yep.
Line 72 increases, remove the last S. Thank you.
Are you on page 4?
Kathy?
The top of page 4, line 124, 125, I think the principal's office salary increase is not contractual. So, because they're not part of the CBA.
Correct.
Don't know if you want to take out the R contractual part.
Where was it?
Line 124.
On page 3, line 104, Mr. Sousa reviewed the computer-assisted instruction. There's there's parentheses in there for some
On
reason.
purpose, because the actual account header is instruct with just a C, so I can take it out.
Oh,
I don't think it matters to me. I kind of put it in there so that people would know that.
It wasn't
It's
you.
as long as as long as there's a reason for it,
Right.
Okay.
as long as there's a reason for it, I'm fine.
I think I did it when I typed up tonight's minutes too.
Dawn, on line 169, you need a period.
So,
And it, yeah, I'm not sure
think
what's
it's
supposed to
incomplete.
end.
it's the, it's about the bubble. It's the fourth and, we can take it out, or I can further explain that it's that, what, fourth and fifth and sixth grade
I
classes?
think it's 5th and 6th this year.
As the current
I
trend.
think it was, you could say the current,
High enrollment
Current
grade.
trend or
yeah.
something.
Current enrollment trends, that
Yeah,
sounds good.
enrollment trends. is good.
Dawn, I have the enrollment report here. Do you want me to look it up?
Yeah, just double check whether it's fourth and fifth or fifth and sixth.
Yeah.
I can't ever remember.
It's really though, there's a bubble all the way through because it's the outgoing.
But where does the bubble start?
11 and 12 are smaller than the income.
Versus
5 through 8.
I would say like 5 through 8 probably, or 4 through 8.
It's 5 through 8, yes.
Okay. So I'll put as the current higher enrollment trend in 5th through 8th grades will mean higher tuition costs,
Yep.
That's good.
or upcoming higher tuition costs or whatever.
For 4 years.
Yep.
What is that?
Line 187, Ms. Levinson stated the school board should be approving its technology plan soon. Is somebody meeting with the Co-Brown?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a separate sentence. Dawn, for line 200, Ms. Martin stated they probably won't meet again until spring because there's a contract in force. Otherwise, it just looks like they're taking some time off.
Line 205, Ms. Martin attended the school climate survey.
I just read that there was agreement that communication is becoming a bigger problem everywhere.
Say that again?
I was just humored by the agreement that communication is becoming a bigger problem everywhere. No changes, I just thought it was amusing.
Line 205.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Any other changes? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of November 15th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm gonna abstain, I wasn't here.
To abstain?
Yes, please.
All right. As far as the minutes of February 1, do we want to just, so it was just Tony, myself, I mean, everybody's reviewed them. Tony, you didn't have any edits?
No.
Go ahead, Tony.
It's consistent with what I remember.
Yep. So I think we just need to, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of February 1, 2018 as amended.
I'll move.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Yeah, I will vote on it.
I was gonna say, I feel like I've been there, I've read them so many times, so I don't know how I should.
Alright,
All right, so that puts that behind us. Good job. All right,
Get waiting for
approval of minutes is done. Do we have a round table? Any other topics, items that anybody needs or wants to cover?
Just the plug for the holiday parade on Saturday morning at 10.
That's right.
And buy your tree, if you haven't got your tree, buy it at the
Fire
fire
at
department,
the
like
fire
we will
department
be.
on Saturday as well. I think the Boy Scouts are helping out to sell the trees, so.
Did you guys finally get your wreaths in
We
yet?
finally got our wreaths. Thank you to Dan DeButts, who I think called the entire New England territory and every tree person in the world to figure it out. But yeah, 2 different shipments. He had to drive 4 hours north to pick them up himself because
my
they wouldn't
God.
deliver them. And we got sort of the first batch, the 12s, 18s, and 24s, and then they basically told us we were out of luck on everything else. And he persevered and got somebody to make them for us, so he's getting the rest. They should be hopefully getting them today or
I
tomorrow.
hope you guys are still making some
It's crazy, yeah. We're
fundraiser of it.
yeah, it's a crazy fundraiser, and unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of different groups have taken on the same one. So the Scouts have been doing the wreaths for years. I want to say at least 15 years, and now suddenly there's a group, I think there was a girls' team at Dover High School that is now doing wreaths, and so on, so it's, yeah. And that, not only that, I think the biggest thing that affected everybody was the early snow. They were up north, obviously got a lot more snow than we did, and trudging through 4 feet of snow, trying to cut down trees. They couldn't cut them down low enough, so they didn't want to cut them, and that kind of thing, so that put a damper on the whole thing, but we'll get them out there. So, all right. I don't have anything else.
So what's our next meeting? I don't have that list, but I know it's next week, but what are we doing? The town?
now first draft,
Town first trip.
Yeah, thank you.
I will
I don't
have
have my
those
glasses
to
on.
you, hopefully Monday night, if not, first thing Tuesday morning, the selectmen are doing their, final pass before they give it to you.
And then
Great.
it's just a discussion.
And that's the
following.
6th, right?
It's
Next
next.
Thursday.
Next
Yeah.
Thursday.
Next Thursday.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
So we'll
We
find
have
out.
a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Thank you all very much.